Hey there, folks. Welcome to episode number 6 of Passionate Talk. I am your host, Gary Karp, and on this episode of Passionate Talk, we're going to be speaking with holistic entrepreneur Jenny Sieck. Jenny is the owner and operator of Inner Voice Intuitive Tarot. That is a guidance and counseling service. We're going to be talking a little bit about her life living with narcissistic parents, how the dream realm helped her find herself, the role that imagination and creativity plays in manifestation, and how the secret and the law of attraction misses the point. This was a great conversation. Jenny is really an interesting person. So without further ado, grab yourself a cup of coffee, some tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Jenny.
Well, that's what cats do.
Absolutely. So I know that when we spoke on the pre-interview and we spoke a little bit earlier, you were talking about your experiences with narcissistic parents. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. My growing up was very head over heart. And when you have a narcissistic parent, you really have to do a lot of mirroring for them at a very young age where they really should be mirroring for you. So you do a lot of anticipating what their needs are, what they expect of you, and it really affects your own growth and your own way of seeing yourself in the world, because you only see yourself through their eyes. They create an environment where their value is stronger than anyone else around, and they work to sustain that environment. So you really don't get a feeling that there are other people who are seeing you. And so it's all filtered through the way that they see you. And that can be really detrimental to a child.
I could imagine that as a child, it would be rather difficult to forge your own identity or even come
Yes,
up with an idea of who you are.
very much so. Very
So
much so.
how did you come up with your own identity, or did you? And if you didn't, when did you forge your own identity and decide this is who I choose to be?
Well, I never really fit in my family, and I always had very what we'll call magical beliefs, and those beliefs really sustained me to a high degree and helped me forge a new identity. And I would say that probably the place where my identity was the most forged was in my dream life. So my dream life was, because of the narcissism, it was riddled with a lot of nightmares and things like that, but it also was an environment where I got to work out a lot of things. And I got to befriend characters in the dream, because often when we have nightmares because they're untended aspects of ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
as we start to work through whatever the dream narrative is and make peace, or have clear boundaries with whatever's showing up in the dream, we work out our own pieces, and so that we're more whole after that. And so I would say that a lot of my identity came from working through things in the dream realm.
Okay. Now, you said that your beliefs were different from your family, that they were more magical. Could you expand on that and tell us a little bit about those beliefs?
Yeah, sure. Well, when I was a kid, and I have to go right back to the dream to do that, because I did so
Okay.
much of this work in the dream. So
Okay.
I had a dream that was very pivotal, and it was part of the basis of my thesis years later. But I had a dream that I was in a castle, and there was this huge giant that was kind of wearing the castle, if you will, which, I mean, you can make of that what you will, but this idea that this huge giant has this armor of this castle. So I'm running around this middle floor and literally trying to move the giant's girth so I can run around the floor. And I was probably about, well, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 at the time, something like that. And in the dream, the giant picked me up and looked me in the eye and then dropped me. And I thought, because, I was this little kid and I was lucid in the dream, so I knew I was dreaming, that the giant was not a nice figure. But in retrospect, I realized that he authored a practice that then I started to do that helped me to have more resilience and more strength, to be more empowered. And when he dropped me in the dream, I fell through these swirling green rings. And after he dropped me, I was able to wake myself up from nightmares by willing myself to see those swirling green rings. So, what he did was he allowed me to have a sense of my own authority and my own creativity, and he enabled me to wake up from something that I couldn't control before. So he gave me a sense of control on my own terms.
So those swirling green rings, what did they represent to you?
They represent moving from one realm to another, and moving from one realm, literally the dream realm, to the waking realm, because I would literally wake up, but also
So it
on
was
a
a gateway, essentially.
yes, absolutely. Yes, he was a gateway archetype. And also, being able to manifest things through this magical way of doing it. And it's funny because when I was young, I really thought that giant character was a pretty noxious being. But in retrospect, when I wrote the thesis, I figured out what a gift he really was. And then I
Mm-hmm.
read a really interesting book by a Jungian psychotherapist called The Scapegoat Complex. And she talks about specifically this narcissistic parent situation and how their eyes will follow you. And when their eyes follow you, you will see things through their eyes, which, I and so this giant looked me in the eye, and he was like another kind of a father figure, that was a father figure that came from a dream realm, that was loving and that was supportive and that was creative and that let me birth my own sense of being, if that makes sense.
Okay, do you believe that this was some sort of wish fulfillment going on in the dream world?
Say more about that.
That the monster that you saw that allowed you to do all these things and find yourself in the dream world was the incarnation of your father, or the father you wanted to have, because you grew up with a narcissistic family and was made to feel less than yourself, that in your dream you were creating the reality that you wanted, the people that you wanted to support you.
Sure, but I wouldn't have known that at the time of the dream. I didn't know that till 30 years, 40 years later. So, sure, yeah, that works for sure.
Okay. So you had this dream, and how did this dream relate to your magical beliefs? How did it start you down the path or make you aware of the beliefs that you had and that they were different from everyone else?
Well, it enabled me to wake up. So instead of being held hostage in these scary, scary dreams, I was literally able to wake up. I was able to move from my dream realm into my waking life, and that gave me a sense of empowerment.
Okay, and I guess what I'm asking for is, what were those specific beliefs?
That the dream realm and that the other realms of reality, right, our imaginative life is as valuable and as transformational as anything that happens in our three-dimensional reality.
Okay, so the belief that essentially sustained you or was birthed at that moment was the belief that imagination and creativity is equally as important as the tangible world, the grounded world, the pentacles world, if you want to put it into a tarot
Yes,
phrase, that we live in every day. It's sort of like a Willy Wonka type of existence.
I would say more important than the three-dimensional reality often, because
Really?
oh yeah, because most of the things that I went on to do, the dreams that I went on to fulfill, started in my dreams. So I would say if I had stayed in my three-dimensional reality and only believed what was there, I never would have made it to these imaginative, magical, and now real places in my life.
So would you say that the dream world, and I'm going to call it the dream world,
Sure.
allowed you to create in full the world that you imagined and then manifested in the outside world? It actually gave you the blueprint where most people would do it with goal setting or LOA. You actually dreamed it into existence, so to speak.
Absolutely, yes, for sure.
Hmm. Could you talk a little bit about that process? Was it a purely subconscious level? Were you aware of what you were creating while you were in that dream state?
I became a lot more aware by the people around me, right? Because I think when you have a narcissistic background, family, and that sort of thing, you spend a lot of years trying to just be comfortable in your own skin, trying to just figure out what is you and what is outside of you, and how to maneuver in that space. And so I think that I didn't give a lot of credence to other people's ideas. I had this idea of this inner authorship, that if it wasn't inside me and didn't make sense from that inner place, it didn't have any relevance. But I was very, very clear the kind of people I wanted around me and the kind of people I didn't want around me. So I had very clear boundaries. And I think that I started to be much more careful about who I allowed to be around me. And so I had a lot of really, really good friends, and they started saying, you talk about this stuff and then you create it. And so I think I started to realize because of them that I really was this person who could manifest these things, that I could manifest them in three-dimensional reality.
Now, how does that experience, because when I'm listening to it here,
Hmm.
it sounds a lot like LOA, a lot like the law of attraction, a lot like what
Hmm.
is taught by
Similar, yeah,
the gurus.
for sure.
So, could you walk me through that process of how you create?
Sure. Well, I think that folks in law of attraction sometimes focus too much on things that are externally tangible,
Mm-hmm.
but this is more about focusing on the feeling of having what you want and
Mm.
more on the subtle cues that you're getting closer to what you want.
You know,
So,
it's
mhm,
very interesting that you say that because I firmly believe, and I have this discussion with a dear friend of mine all the time, that the key to everything is feeling it, making it visceral in your nervous system to make it
absolutely.
real for you.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in, feel it and then you will be it.
And I think that's really what is missing from everyone who teaches the law of attraction. It's sort of like they
Yep.
teach you how to do everything, but they don't teach you how to anchor into those feelings, how to get and develop that certainty in yourself that this will happen, that you will have it, and how you will feel when everything manifests. And that is really great that you came up with that on your own is astounding because that is a key that I don't think that many people know about.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true. A lot of times with clients, who aren't ready to go out into the world, I think we get a lot of messages about how we should be ready, how we have to go out there and do it right now, and there's this hurriedness, about everything. And I actually think that we can do so much just by lying on our couch and imagining and feeling what it will feel like to move through those places. So I often counsel clients, if you're not ready to go out there and go do that thing, you literally make yourself a cup of tea, lie on your couch, close your eyes, go into your happy place, and see yourself there. And then move through the uncomfortable feelings as you do that, and then go out and start to do it in the external world.
Okay, I was about to ask you because I'm a big proponent of visualization. I use it
Hmm.
myself, I use it with my clients. I really believe that everything that I have created or co created in this world, including this podcast and whatever will come from it, has come from a
Hmm.
point of visualization and asking myself the question how could I bring value to the world, have a good
Hmm.
time doing it, and be able to support my lifestyle? In other words, make money.
Sure.
And I think that's something that everyone in the metaphysical community or the holistic community may be afraid of. We have a block against money and
I
making
agree.
money. And I think that's something that we really, as a group, need to get past because we bring something of value to the
I
world in
agree.
what we bring. And value does have a monetary note to it. It does have a value for money. And let's face it, if we don't have money and we can't pay our rent and we can't pay our bills and we're living on the streets and we're begging for money, we can't share our gifts.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that the law of attraction, like I'm thinking specifically, oh, what is that movie? Now, I
Oh, The
really like
Secret.
What the Bleep Do We Know? Yeah, The Secret.
Oh, yeah.
Um, really misses it on both ends because on the one end, they say, that this is about tangible, physical, material things. And on the other end, there isn't this, place of allowing yourself to play in what's possible in that place. If I don't know if I'm making sense.
You are, because I have the same reaction to it, because it made it seem like you just walk past a jewelry store window, look at the diamond necklace, and go, gee, that would seem good, and boom, you have it. And
Yes,
there's a lot of work, internal and external work, that goes
yes,
on in order to manifest that. I have a dear
yes.
friend, and we're always talking about the law of attraction, and she is a master manifester. I am in total awe of this woman.
Hmm.
And the one thing she always says to me is she doesn't understand how the law of attraction became so popular so fast, because of out of all the modalities, it is the most difficult one to master, because you
Hmm.
have to take ownership, you have to take
Yes.
responsibility, and you have to be present and aware of everything going on, moving towards your goal at every moment. It's not magic.
And you have to move through your shadow, right? You have to
Exactly.
move through your fears as well.
Exactly. I'm doing that. I'm discovering that I'm blocking myself, and
Hmm.
that's something that everyone has to get past. That they have to sit down with themselves with that cup of tea on the couch and visualize what it will be like, and really feel what it feels like in
Right,
your nervous system, because that's what really woke it up to me. I was doing this exercise
right.
about what it would have to have an abundance of money, and I had this feeling in my system that I didn't expect.
And that was a resistant feeling?
Yes, it
Yeah.
was one of ambivalence, it was one of nervousness, it
Hmm.
was one of
Sure.
shame. And I
Right.
said, whoa, 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 wait a second, what is this? And
Yeah.
I then had to dismantle that and explore that and take it apart brick by brick.
That's right. That's exactly right. And a movie like The Secret doesn't honor that part of it. And that is a real part of the journey, that dismantling those pieces that impede you moving forward.
So when you were moving through this, what pieces did you have to dismantle? What was your whoa, wasn't expecting that you had to do the work on?
Well, I've had to do a lot of work around family of origin and around tribe and about what my purpose is here. And I've had a lot of opportunity to move through limiting beliefs.
It's very interesting how we choose the people, choose the souls, for better or for worse, that we want to go through life after life after life after life experience with.
Yes, yes, it is. It's fascinating. And it's fascinating how, when we really listen to what it is we need, we make better choices about who to have around us. We really start to understand that alchemical balancing, that
Oh,
needs to
yes.
happen.
So you had this situation with your family,
Hmm.
growing up with the narcissistic parents, and this gave you a belief to yourself that the inner world, the more creative world, was actually more important than the external world. It helped you manifest where you were going and what you were doing.
Yes.
How do you think it affected your later life? I know when we spoke earlier, you were talking about several jobs and toxic job situations. Do you think that is really a choice that you are either consciously or subconsciously making as you move through your employment history and your college life that we talked about earlier?
Oh, absolutely. When I had those encounters with narcissistic bosses, before I figured out what was going on, before I could name it, oh, this is narcissism, I kept going and finding the same kind of, just like they talk about in What the Bleep Do We Know? You find the same situation until you make it conscious, or what Young talks about, that you will repeat the same patterns until you make them conscious, until the unconscious becomes conscious, I believe he says. And when I realized that what I was meant to do was be an entrepreneur, that is when that pattern started to dissipate.
How did you decide not only, hey, I don't want to work in a cubicle environment anymore, this is not who I am, I want to work in a holistic, metaphysical business to help people emotionally and spiritually and energetically? How did that come about?
Well, I always knew that. And I would always say, I want to build a counseling business that helps people move the energy of their dreams into their waking life. And people would scratch their head and they would say, well, how are you going to do that? And I would say, I don't know, but that's what I want to do. I just sat for a while. I remember actually having a dream about it. I had this dream that I was walking along at the edge of this fence. There was this wood in front of me, and I looked, and it was a box. And I climbed up on I'm sorry, it was that the wood was above. There was a drum. There was like a big tall drum. But I didn't, because I was looking at the ground, so I didn't see that. And
Are
then
we
I looked
talking like
up
an oil drum or like a playing African
like a
djembe
shamanic
drum?
drum. Yeah, like a Native American drum.
Okay.
And I climbed up on top of the drum, and there was a cupboard. And I just reflexively got up off on top of the drum and pulled myself up and got into the cupboard. And I just sat there all curled up. I just was like, what am I going to do? I'm stuck in this cupboard and there's nowhere to go. It's off the ground. And then I was like, don't worry about what you're supposed to do. Just be in the cupboard.
Were you waiting for Hagrid?
Yeah. And what I did was finally, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to knock out the wall. So I knocked out the back wall in the cupboard. And then I ended up in this kitchen. Well, it turns out then that, and the kitchen had this like 1950s floor and stuff like that. It wasn't several years. It was like about 6 months later, this gentleman in my city does this radio show called With Insights Radio, and he contacted me and said, hey, I'd love to have you on the radio show. And I said, and he's a Native American shaman, and I said to him, okay, I'd love to be on your radio show, not knowing what I was getting into. And after the show, he said, I would love to have you do a show for us. And I went to his house, and that floor in that kitchen was his floor. I was like, whoa.
You're
Yes.
kidding. So the floor you saw in the dream
Yes.
was the Native American shaman radio host's floor in his
Yes.
actual kitchen.
Yes, same colors and everything. I kid you not. Yes.
Oh, wow,
Yes.
that's wild.
Yes.
You know, I'm hearing you talk about these stories, and the one lesson that I'm taking is that if you just let go with the flow, focus on the goal, but don't worry about the journey so much, and just let the universe take its course,
Yes.
you're going to get there.
That's right. That's right. The universe has conspired for you. Yes.
Most people, myself included, being this type A personality, have got to push and know every little portion of the journey.
Right.
And I want to thank you actually for coming on and sharing these stories with us, not only for the podcast and for our audience, but I think there's some sort of divine intervention going on here.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's
Because this is a message that I needed to hear.
Oh, I'm happy for that.
To realign myself, to just chill out. And don't worry, you're going to get there. Those feelings that you have that everything is falling into place, is everything falling into place. Now,
Yes.
Don't fuck it up by freaking out. Just let it happen.
Yes.
Deal with the obstacles and just understand the universe has a plan.
Yes.
That plan is the one you gave it, meaning I created.
Yes.
And that is a powerful lesson. And I'm getting chills just now when I said that, because I have never vocalized it in that way before, and I thank you for giving me that gift.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'm glad
because
that resonates.
People, for the most part, even in the metaphysical community, and I'm starting to get a little choked up here.
Yeah.
Really, we fight so hard to get what we want, whether it's respect, whether it's a business, whether it's money. We just forget that, look, send your intentions to the universe. Move towards it, do the inner work that you have to do, as we were talking about before, the heavy lifting internally and externally.
Yes.
And then just trust that the universe is going to take care of you. That everything that comes up, every obstacle that comes up, is there for a reason. And it's basically there to say, hey, are you really serious about this?
Yes, absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
at every obstacle, you can sit there and go, it's an obstacle. I'm going to move through it. You can get overwhelmed and drive yourself nuts. That's usually the course I take.
Yes.
Or you can just say, screw it. I'm out of here. This is too difficult.
Right, right.
And from what I'm hearing, from what you're saying and what you're teaching and you're sharing, Jenny, and again, I thank you, is just trust in the universe, that just like
Hmm.
your dream that you had about climbing into the cupboard and the box, and that was the universe's way of telling you, hey, this is a sign. You don't know what's going on now, but
Hmm.
just play everything out and you will get there.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So I've got a question for you. For those of us who are not gifted with the second sight, if I could use the word, or dream interpretation, or dreaming, lucid dreaming, signs, however you want to put it,
Hmm.
how can we find the signs in the universe if we are not able to dream or meditate or visualize to the point where, bang, we're going to get that sign and we may not know it's for us at that moment? Where can we look elsewhere? How can we connect with energy or source to understand what's going on and calm ourselves during this journey?
Yes. First, like what you said, calm down and breathe. Go out in nature or do something creative, any creative endeavor, and notice what resonates. Notice what you're drawn to. We have a very intelligent, intuitive system that helps us notice when we calm down what draws us, what objects, what feelings, what music, what all of those sensory experiences. And notice what resonates and notice where there are meaningful patterns. Now, don't go up in your head and overthink it because that's where you can get real analytical. But notice what Genlin calls your felt sense, what feels and senses powerful to you. So those elements will help draw you toward what intuitively is right for you, and then make an agreement with the universe. I have an agreement with the universe that I want beautiful throw pillows and lots of jewelry, no matter how much money I do or don't have. I have that agreement with the universe.
Now, going back to the cupboard and metaphors, which all dreams are just metaphors,
Yes.
do you take more stock in a dream dictionary or finding the answers within yourself?
Finding the answers within yourself. It's kind of a two-part question because Jung's work was in archetypes, was in the idea of the personal unconscious and then the collective unconscious. So there are archetypes that have an underlying meaning that is cross-cultural, right? That really is universal. But I find the most powerful work often when we're not in the place of a complex is to go into that felt sense space of, oh, there was a dog, but the dog, there's a big difference between a dog that's shaggy and wet and a dog that's dry and has fluffy fur. Like what is the difference there? How does it feel different to you? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's your dog in the dream. It's how did the dog show up to you? I'm not a big believer in the dream dictionaries at all. I think they're very general, and that they just very much scratch the surface. Don't rely on what the books say because that will flatten your own imagination. What is most important is that you have something that resonates. Actually, I got in trouble because I was doing a talk at one of these metaphysical bookstores, and my partner said to me, Jenny, you really have to quit saying don't buy any books. They're like
Yeah, I'm betting you weren't invited back to that bookstore.
no, I was, but I didn't realize I was saying that. I was like, well, I guess you have a point.
Oh, that's funny. That's I agree with you, but that is funny. For any of our listeners who want to do the dream work, what suggestions do you have for them to sit down in their space and really work on the symbology that is coming up in their heads?
to follow it, to play with it, to make it real in their lives more. I am really a big believer in active imagination, you know.
Very cool. Now, there are plenty of people out there who are going through their own obstacles, going through their own challenges. What advice would you have for them? What's the one thing you would say to do or to practice in a daily ritual?
To step away from any of the shoulds that the culture or their family tell them, to step away from any of that material, and to step into the place of the imagination, to step into what resonates, what inspires you.
Right now, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about what you do and your business and do a little plug, because I'm sure that people listening to this podcast are probably very intrigued and fascinated by what you do and the way you speak and your background. And I'm pretty sure that one or two people will reach out to you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Intuitive Tarot and your business and how people can get in touch with you?
Sure. My business is Inner Voice Intuitive Tarot Guidance and Counseling. And I work with clients one-on-one to help them tell their story intuitively. Sometimes we do that with the tarot, and I do teach classes in working with archetypal and intuitive tarot, and do readings as well. And sometimes I just do it with, more counseling kind of, coaching strategies. I also do chakra balancing, hypnotherapy, the totem work that I talked about with you a bit. And I also design a necklaces and bracelets called Sacred Bracelets, Intuitive Designs. So I design jewelry for people to work with their intuition. And you can reach me by checking out Inner Voice Intuitive or Inner Voice Intuitive on Facebook, or my website, or on YouTube, Inner Voice
And
Intuitive.
that website address is, just to give it to us for the audience?
InnerVoiceIntuitive.com.
InnerVoicesIntuitive.com, and that's also Inner Voice Intuitive on YouTube?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, anything like that?
Twitter, Pinterest, Sacred Bracelets on Instagram.
Jenny, I do want to thank you. It's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation that we're having. And I know that if I had the time, I can talk about this forever and ever, because you're absolutely fascinating with what you talk about and how you present it. And again, from a personal standpoint, thank you for sharing that gift you did earlier. It really touched me about having to slow down and just trusting the universe, because that's a big one for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Gary, for having me on, and thanks for creating your wonderful podcast.
You're very welcome. Have a great day.
You too. Take care, Gary.
That was such a great, great conversation with Jenny. She is such a passionate, intelligent, smart person. It was wonderful to sit down with her for a little bit and talk with her. And of course, the universe, as we discussed, always has a message for you, will always be there to guide you. And on this episode, my conversation with Jenny, the universe was there for me. I love the fact that she shared that information. I love the fact that she shared her dreams. The dream that she had with the monster when she was 6 or 7 years old that enabled her to really create who she was and figure out who she was, even though she was in a toxic environment with narcissistic parents. The dream that she had that when she was trapped in the box and she kicked herself out of the box and ended up in a kitchen, and 6 months later she was staring at that same kitchen as she was talking with the shaman who gave her that first job on the radio show. That was some incredible stuff. I got goosebumps just talking with her and listening to the wisdom that she gave us. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for this episode of Passionate Talk. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're enjoying what you're listening to, please head on over to iTunes and hit the subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a real good review. And above all, if you do like us, share us with your friends. So, until we meet again, follow your dreams and passions and manifest the life you choose.